Doesn't mean it's sunshine.
Thank you.
No, I didn't.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, we have to go into it gradually.
Hi.
Are we up? Good afternoon, everybody. The steering committee will call to order at 4:02 p.m. I'd like to have a motion to accept the May 9th minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? And the May 21st minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. We're gonna have a group interview of the stakeholders, and I'm gonna pass this over to Bob.
Thank you, Alan.
Always like passing it over to you, Bob.
You know, it's kind of funny, the selectmen came up, do the same thing to me when combined meetings. Anyway, good afternoon, I'm Bob Metcalf with Mitchell and Associates. And with me today is Christy Mateo from Royal Palmer, we're two of the members of the consulting team working on the development of the master plan for this property, so. What we're, I would love to ask it, everybody. You send telepathy to me, so.
Okay.
What we'd like to do is be able to go around the room and everybody introduce themselves prior to me getting off on the next task, which is going through some other questions pertaining to each one of the committees, so. Lori, you want to start?
I'm Lori Smith, the town manager.
Alan Daggett, Selectman.
Sheila Matthews Book, Selectman.
Hi everybody, I'm Rebecca Young, I'm a volunteer on the committee.
On the village parcel committee,
On the Village Parcel
because we
Committee.
have a lot of committees.
This,
Hi, I'm Beverly Soul, and I'm here to represent the Senior Ad Hoc Committee.
I'm Jim Stockman. I'm here to represent the Lighting Committee.
Stedman Seavey, I'm representing the Budget Board.
Ruth Fernandez, the Cemetery Committee.
Carol the Bosnian Conservation Committee.
John Harcourt on the Village Planning Committee.
Mike Weston, Village Planning Committee.
Connie Dykstra, Village Planning Committee.
Steve Powell, Shade Tree Committee.
John Ripton, Shade Tree Committee.
Christy Mateo, Royal Palmer.
Werner Gilliam, Director of Planning and Development.
Okay, thank you. So as you probably have we've generated some general questions to go over tonight, and this afternoon we will. And the first thing I'm gonna do is give you kind of an overview of the parcel itself to bring you up to I should just get one of those that you plug in my face. An overview of the parcel itself. The parcel fronts on North Street in this location, and then it has frontage along School Street. The property is an 86.67 acre parcel. The property had gone through a permitting process for a residential subdivision a number of years ago. Thus some of the improvements that have been done out there that we'll go over. There are two streams that run through the property. There's one that comes up this wetland along here, ties in here, and the second one merges down, and the two of them merge together, ultimately go down and across under North Street and out into the Kennebunk River. The streams have a regulatory setback requirement of 75 feet on either side of the stream. So this access way that you're seeing coming in off of North Street, its location is predicated upon those setback requirements. The wetlands, if you can see in here, are some of the dotted areas. So there's a pocket of wetlands in here, there are wetland corridors associated with the stream in here, some wetland pockets here, and we have the wetlands associated with the stream corridor, another series coming through here. So these are the defined wetland areas on site that total about 16 acres of wetland. There are 3 significant vernal pools on the site, 2 of which are located down along this corner of the site and here with the CMP power easement. And they have a 100-foot no disturbance buffer around those. In this particular location between the wetland and the vernal pool, it's a section of the site that's very difficult to even consider doing any sort of development in it. The other significant pool is up in this location in here in a wooded area, and it is a significant vernal pool. It also has the 100-foot setback. There were a couple of minor pools that have non-significant pools that are located in the back corner of the site along this parcel here. Reference to CMP easement, there's a 135-foot wide CMP power transmission easement that runs through and divides the parcel. The zoning on the, current zoning on the site, the front portion that comes in off the North Street side is village residential, and then everything on this side, out to School Street, is the free enterprise zone. Adjacencies, existing properties, you have Foxbury Woods in this location here, several parcels owned by the Daggett family. Bishop's Woods is located over here. The Weintraub parcel borders a significant segment of the property. And then Wallace Woods, which was just recently developed, is located over here. And then the McKay property, which is probably the equal size, almost equal size to this, the village parcel, is located and has all its frontage along School Street. Bailey Court is located opposite where the entrance is, and we have Shaman Woods. Consolidated School is located down here, Dock Square, and then Cape Arundel Golf Course. We've shown some travel distance as the crow flies, if you will. So from the entrance on North Street, a quarter mile brings you up, just down past where the fire station is in this location here. A half-mile distance would take you down into Dock Square. And then on the other end, we've shown basically what that travel distance would be. This is the quarter-mile distance, half-mile gets you down closer to Consolidated, and then it's almost a mile from the School Street entrance down to the square in Cape Porpoise. Let's see. On the property itself, part of this development was permitted for an acre and a quarter of wetland disturbance, and that has been mitigated by a parcel that was obtained. So those are some initial impacts that were done on the site that carry with the property itself. Let's see. As again I said, with the access, the way this road has been cut in, the clearing was done for the roadway, and there was a rough gravel base installed on that. The delineation, as I said, down here was pretty much promulgated by the setback requirements along the stream corridor here. The crossing here was pretty much determined by our discussions with CMP in terms of where it could actually cross their easement area, because the grade really gets significant up in here, and this was the most logical place to put it. And this alignment in the core was more or less meant to slow down the traffic coming through. And then this segment along here was pretty much followed a road that had been approved for the prior landowner to the developer that was looking at this property. So we pretty much held that alignment. It already had some wetland crossings in this location here. So that's what determined where this alignment coming in from School Street would be. So, and then the green areas you're seeing in here are areas that have been cleared, that were cleared primarily for the potential lot development, and then the remaining portion of the site is all wood. So, I think that pretty much, nope, utilities. Sewer and water were stubbed into the North Street end, and then power will be coming in off of the North Street. That's, I think, it in terms of the lot. And if anybody has any questions before we move into the
Is there any stormwater management for that road, or is it strictly positive drainage off the road?
The site was designed with stormwater improvements for the prior development. Some of those elements would wind up being potentially part of whatever future development happens on this site. Obviously, the change in terms of how this site may be developed would dictate how the stormwater changes would occur in terms of accommodating for stormwater runoff. Okay.
Right, and the areas that were cleared, are they now just open grassland areas, or are they stumped?
They were stumped, and they're pretty much, they were revegetated, they were grassed over, and actually the successional growth of grasses and ferns also coming up into those areas. So the site is stabilized at this point.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so we're gonna go into questions, because right now what the whole interview process for the stakeholder groups is for the consulting team and to understand what the needs are of the various committees, the public in general, municipal staff, when we do the interview with the staff, to help us come up with a range of uses that everybody, and needs that the community feels as though are pertinent to this development of the master plan to guide what can happen on this property. And I'll step back, because I've done this place now. The master plan itself is not the final design of how the property will be developed, as it is developing a program that acts as a guideline for the community to move forward and try and identify how those uses could occur on site, and then take it to the second stage, which would be actually creating some sort of development opportunities on the site. So it's not a plan that says this is what's going to happen, it is the guideline for the community. So the first question we have, and I guess, someone has to leave early.
Yes, Beverly.
Beverly. So what I'll do is I'll start with the first question, and have all of you kind of think about answers on these. Is what are important issues that should be considered, questions right there, specifically land use needs and other important objectives that should be considered in the development of a master plan.
The senior committee would like you to consider mixed generation housing, as it's important to us. We vision it as a combination of seniors who wish to downsize to affordable housing condos with young families who wish to settle in Kennebunkport. And we'd like you to consider the traditional New England model of the big house, little house, back house barn. And many architectural designs are in this book with this title that was presented by Thomas Hupka, the author and architect. I brought the book. It's just our committee thought this would be a great way to create more of the New England, Maine scene, and have it be a combination of seniors and young families. So you just want to answer the one question at this point.
Well, if your timing is such, if you feel we can go through all the questions that pertain to you, since I understand.
Okay, well, I have at least an hour, so
okay.
Yeah, it's not quite that short.
Then we'll swing
Okay.
through everybody.
I'd like to hear what other people have to say.
Mr. Stockman, yeah, use the microphone.
The lighting committee, having addressed the original proposal on this site by the developer, discovered many shortcomings in our ordinance, and we recognize that our ordinance has to be updated to match the current technology of today. And so the committee lighting committee is very familiar with this parcel and the challenges of retaining the atmosphere of Kennebunkport, even in a residential situation, and not having it be the brightest thing in town.
Thank you. The Budget Board has not met to specifically take a position on this. In fact, I was on the Budget Board after town meeting approval, so I don't know what the Budget Board's position was in terms of approving it or disapproving it. When I was at the town meeting, I was not on the Budget Board, but I supported it. And I think it's a tremendous piece of property with a lot of potential. What I would like to see perhaps is, to be honest with you, just sitting on it. You know, the way time goes by, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, let's not rush into anything. You know, it's a great piece of land. I'm glad that we have it now. Access from both Buttonwood and North Street, a large parcel. it has some tremendous value and a lot of potential uses. And I know we're having a thought process now as to what we should do with it, but I think we should at least think about just sitting on it for a little while and see what may develop. Obviously, public facilities, you know, whatever that may be, private recreational facilities, or certainly private developmental, facilities. But, the budget board itself has not taken a position, and that's just my own personal opinion. Thank you.
I'm on the cemetery committee, and I'm really not sure this all applies. There is a cemetery right across the street from the front of this. There are no new burials in that cemetery. I did mention you should probably speak with the Arundel Cemetery, which does have plots available. They did just open up a whole new section. I've been trying to contact somebody to find out how many new plots there are there, and I couldn't contact it. I couldn't get a hold of anybody. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with how many new plots there might be there. Maybe something to consider for this piece of land, because most people get buried in a town plot these days, not on their own land.
Has the cemetery committee talked about whether or not because we don't have any active cemeteries that the public has access to.
Except the Arundel Cemetery.
Yeah, and so whether or not, there's a need, do you think, for us to be planning for a future cemetery, or?
I think that all depends on what the Arundel Cemetery has to say about how many plots they've put in and how much more they can expand there. There they are. And I just have to follow up with what you said, because when the Recreation Committee was trying to see if they could put the new park, this was many, many years ago, it's now Beechwood Park, in this piece of property, because this was town-owned. And the selectmen at that point said, well, they didn't really want it here because we might, put something else there. They didn't really know what they were going to put there, and it all evolved. But it took a long time for that to evolve. They had the forethought to buy the piece of property, and then it just all evolved.
Thank you.
So the Conservation Commission had a meeting last night, and we did discuss these questions. And I think we're coming from the point of view of recognizing the functionality of the parcel and the town's needs for functional requirements, which may be housing or other public usage. And also taking into consideration preserving the natural characteristics of the site. There are considerable wetlands and vernal pools. Could be an educational source, it could be a recreational source for the town. Centrally located somewhat for that type of usage. But I think the Conservation Commission would also feel that that type of usage might play a secondary role to the town's functional requirements, if that be the case. I think that the Conservation Commission is not inclined to go in with private development. The parcel is surrounded by private development. With that many wetlands, it's probably at a low point of the developments, so there's obviously going to be some runoff from those other developments surrounding the parcel into that wetland area. And I don't think that the private usage is something that the commission would like to see. I kind of combined question 1 and 2, I think, with that answer. We did have one question, though, as to the type of private development that was proposed initially, and what sections of the parcel that was intended to be appropriated for.
What was it, the design, the development part?
Yeah.
Basically, the front portion of the property, yeah, come on, forward of this, okay, forward of the CMP easement,
Mm-hmm,
there were two buildings in here for a total of 8 multiplex units.
mm-hmm.
And then back up in this corner in here, there was a 4-unit multiplex. And then basically all the area along the North Street frontage was preserved as open space. And then open space basically all along the stream corridor, except for where, you know, the road crossings occurred. This was all being dedicated for the most, as open space area. And then these locations in here where the tree clearing occurred, they were all duplex condo units. And basically they were skirted all along the outer edges of the road, and then there were cul-de-sacs that went off in several different directions. And then there were several duplex units basically along the school street end.
Yeah, so our concern was that, especially with that extent of development, with the stormwater runoff, which isn't, the Conservation Commission does have an issue with that, and it's a lot of, you know, non-porous surface being added to that site. So hopefully, if that's one direction that we would, you know, we would like to.
Well, the original design concept on this was one of the first approved LID, low-impact development sites. So all the technology for stormwater infrastructure improvements, utilizing infiltration filters, and it was modified to use what's called the focal point system, which basically takes the stormwater, treats it all before it then ultimately is discharged.
Excellent, good.
So I mean, the site was looked at that way, and as part of the master planning, would be identifying what some of the needs would be to accommodate the stormwater. So the town has an idea at the tail end of what the master plan is, what sort of requirements are gonna be there to actually develop this.
I think that I think would be a good use of the site then, as long as those aspects were considered.
Bob, you used the term front and rear of the site.
Yep.
Is that on purpose, or is there something that?
Well, I basically use the North Street end as the frontage. Both of them have frontage, and it's just, rather than me saying there's two fronts, you know, so moving towards the rear. The primary core of the way the development of the site occurred is really in here, so I kind of looked at that as more the front. This is the core, and then this short dog leg coming into it. So that's just more my nomenclature of how I'm talking about the site.
So go to shade tree.
Right.
Is shade tree now? Okay. Steve, you want to start? Aye. We agree a lot with what the Conservation Trust is talking about, what they've addressed already. With 16 acres of wetlands and 2 significant vernal pools, it's a great opportunity for us to look at having an educational wooded walkway that emphasizes the importance not only of the ecological importance of the area, but also the geological importance, as well as the relationship that trees have to this. Because as you may know, we have in the Shade Tree Committee been developing an idea of the town as an arboretum, and we see this as part of a potential part and a very significant part of how, given its educational possibilities, of how we could further improve that. One of the great attractions of the town, it seems to us, looking at it from the Shade Tree Committee, but also looking at it as residents of the town, is the woodlands here. You can take an aerial photo of this town and you can see that there is extensive woodlands in populated areas. In fact, you might say this town is a town of trees as much as a town of seas. So it's very important to keep that in mind. So one would be the walkway, and we have the expertise on the Shade Tree Committee with people who have knowledge in ecology, an engineer, you know, a person who's an attorney, historian, and a few other people quite aware of the botany. And so we would love to be able to oversee the development of maybe in cooperation with the Conservation Trust, the development of a educational recreational path through it. The second thing that we'd like to comment on, we want to acknowledge that the idea of the low-impact, eco-friendly measures that are being considered and hopefully taken into action. We would like to propose that the trees along the street be a diverse population of trees that could be planted and again overseen by the Shade Tree Committee, so that along the street we have this diverse number of trees that enable to not only enhance the ecology of the town, but to enhance the resistance of any kind of intrusion by pests or other kinds of things, other kinds of threats to the arboreal environment here. We also, the third thing is we might consider, and we certainly would support the idea of a small educational center that would allow for a focus for school children and people from the public in general to be able to be introduced to the very kinds of things that the Shade Tree Committee that I've already laid out, that we think would be a benefit to the town. Would highlight its legacy, its history, as well as its ecology. So, thank you.
Thank you. I gotta reverse myself, I missed that. No, I won't do that yet, it's just, we'll go to the second question. What concerns does your committee have regarding growing demands and needs for the town, i.e. public services, housing needs, commercial use, open space, we kind of talked some about that, and how should the property be used?
Well, we saw that similar to the first question too, as some other people here spoke about. When and if senior-specific housing can be developed, and if it's on town land, that the committee recommends that town senior residents certainly be included, and that a pet-friendly environment be considered. That's all.
Again, lighting affects everyone, especially at night, but also during the daytime in terms of how it fits into the landscape. The important issues are the lighting committee to be involved in all phases of the project, to try to preserve the dark sky. As I said, when you were explaining the cluster housing, that really was the cluster condominium. We were looking at our ordinance that said you're only allowed so much light, and all of a sudden we had 3 garages and 3 entrances, and each one of them had light on them, and realized that we didn't address that even though it met all the criteria of our ordinance, there was going to be an impact, and the impact was to the neighbors or to the abutters of that property. So again, to be involved from this point on forward, to work within our ordinance and to change our ordinance to better reflect the needs of today.
Can I ask you a question, Jim? Are you working on changes to the ordinance at this point, or not?
Continually, yes. Yeah, we're working on a number of issues, but we need to specifically address the ordinance as it's written. It is the second oldest, or within the top 3 oldest ordinances within the United States in terms of dark sky. We started in 1978, 77, and so Tucson, Arizona was the first, and ours was second or third, and we are the only town that has the largest selection of platter lights, incandescent platter lights, on our streets. There's one other that I know of in Harrisville, New Hampshire, but we're very unique here, and we need to preserve that in every aspect of this project as it comes developed, or if it sits there, great, because we would really like to preserve the night sky And if there's no lighting, we've accomplished that.
Okay, thanks, John.
Yeah, I think
Passing the buck.
The Conservation Commission does not support commercial use of the site. We understand that there may be town requirements for functional usage of public services. Certainly we would, or housing was mentioned. Certainly we would support the open space usage as we just discussed. I think that no matter what usage is there, that the landscape design of the site would be extremely important in maintaining the natural character of the site. And so the design, the type of plantings, trees, and the native plants, preserving that more natural characteristic and not incorporating a more, I'm gonna say commercial or a forced landscape, I think would be extremely important, whatever the use may be.
I have a question. So when you say commercial use, are you also considering assisted living as a commercial use?
Yes, I would say any type of, whether it's housing, it's assisted living, any type of structures that are built onto the site. I think in accordance with, the Shade Tree Commission, that there's ways of doing the landscape that can really give it more of a natural feel and maintain the character of the site. That can be done. Needs to be done in advance, so that there's, proper grading, tree removal, and the landscape design to make sure that happens.
I don't think you understood my question, or maybe I don't understand your answer, but what I'm wondering was, are you would you be for assisted living? That's also commercial use, and you're telling us, or telling the committee that you're not really interested in
Well,
any
commercial, I think at our meeting last night, I wasn't able to attend the first meeting, but a member of the commission said that someone brought up that, like, the use of, for instance, coffee shops and that sort of thing. So that's, we were focusing on that as a commercial use.
Okay.
Assisted living, I would not consider commercial use.
Thank you.
Okay.
Back to Shade Tree.
Oh, back to Shade Tree. Contingent on the use of state-of-the-art eco-friendly landscaping and construction of buildings that may be of commercial use to the extent that, housing, town offices, town facilities that are necessary. As long as these things are planned with the idea in mind that the preservation of the natural landscape is a priority, then the Shade Tree Committee has had no conversation that would indicate that they're against the housing of that kind of thing. But we want to emphasize that there's a need to follow the direction and the ideas of the Conservation Trust as well. Now, to add to that, I think that any kind of recreational, educational use of that property would go a long way to engaging the town in the importance and the direction that the town selectmen and town manager and others have done in purchasing this parcel in the first place. And I think that's really important, to keep it open to the public and to make it meaningfully engaging. And I think, obviously, it's the natural qualities of the place that need to be preserved. And those are the very elements that would allow us to engage the population, public in it.
Thank you. So the next question is, what design characteristics should be considered in our implementation strategy? And I think some of them have already been kind of discussed in the first couple of questions, but.
Yeah, it's going back to what I've already said, traditional New England architecture is what's really important, and that the landscaping be attractive, and we'll leave that to the experts to decide how that is. And energy efficiency in the future is very important. And there again, we don't consider ourselves experts on that, but if I could ask a question, assisted living was brought up, is that something you'd like to see happen?
Maybe in the future, yes, yeah, I'd like to see
Yeah.
some of that. I think that the people that are living in this community, they wanna retire here, they may wanna stay here. A lot of people have to move away because they need assisted living, and I've talked to quite a few, I've been here almost all my life.
Yeah,
Not yet, but almost.
I've
And
wondered if,
they've always said that, you know, a lot of people have told me that we'd like to stay here,
yeah,
but we can't take care of our big house, or we can't afford our
Yeah.
big house anymore, we need to sell. And, but we don't wanna leave, but
yeah.
they have to. because
Well,
we
I've
have-
wondered if the size of our community would support that, the expense of it. And it is already quite quite a bit developed in Kennebunk. But I was
But
just
that's
curious
not-
to know what
yeah,
your thinking
But
was.
that's not Kennebunkport.
No, it's not,
You know,
no.
I would like to
Well, the
live out
chamber
my
says the
life.
Kennebunks, so, when it's
that's-
convenient, I guess. Yeah,
You
well, I
asked
live
how
here
I-
too, and,
Yeah, well, you asked how I felt, and
yeah,
I told you.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, take this, let's share this one.
I think I've already answered probably the rest of them in my response already. I just have one general comment for everybody, that you talk about assisted living, and images pop into each of our heads of an enormous, I've worked on projects in Vermont that were assisted living, that were, over the top, met all the environmental criteria, but most people couldn't afford to even go there. So be careful as you go forward with these words, because the images that pop into people's heads are quite, well, you said assisted living, and I didn't expect something the size of the Colony Hotel.
Well, that's not what I said. I said assisted living. I mean, I didn't say it was gonna be the size of the Colony Hotel.
No, I know,
You know,
but,
everything is relative.
yeah, but the term, different images pop into people's heads.
Would that be something appropriate for the senior committee to look into as to what it might cost and?
I think that, part of this master planning process is we'd have an economic factor, and we have a consultant that's gonna focus on that. So certainly we've heard that as an idea, the whole downsizing. I mean, it's different to have smaller houses, and then it's different to have multi-units where seniors can live together, and it's different to have assisted living. Do you know what I mean? So that's a wide range, and I think if that's something the community's interested in, Camoin Associates will be talking about that, and that might require its own plan to determine if it could financially be sustained, and what's the actual need and all of that.
Thank you. The question says, what design characteristics should we consider? I think that can be partially answered just by the characteristics of the parcel itself. Large parcel, centrally located, but only partially developable, with a lot of problem. That portion that is developable would give anybody headaches in developing it. I would agree with a couple of the speakers that we should be very, very deliberate in putting up any kind of structures there. The only kind of structure I think that we should consider is public structures, like, for instance, a new town hall complex or something. I hate to say, sometimes in a small town like ours, when you have your town hall, all of a sudden you start to get departments in different parts of the town, in this building and that building, where maybe they should be all put together. But that's certainly, food for thought down the road. So I think we should be very deliberate on our thinking on that. My first comments earlier, I'd go back to number 6, should the town identify a portion of the site to be retained for future, yet to be determined needs of the town? I think we should go through this process and give it a lot of thought, but not necessarily rush in on every one. We should wait and see where those needs actually take us. We know we have needs for housing, other kind of housing, and things of that, but we may also have needs for public buildings. And we certainly could have, have a beautiful, just our own park, do it very nicely. Everything the town does seems to be done very nicely. But I'm not sure if one necessarily outweighs any of the others right at this moment. In 5 years, we may know.
I'd like to follow up on what you said. I think it's really good points. The parcel is shaped in a fashion and of different natural characteristics where it could be, segments of it could be used for different purposes. And I think that's really important. It's a nice way to use the parcel. Again, getting back to the use of the trees and the landscape can create an integrated feel of the parcel, which I think would be important. The Conservation Commission would certainly not be against the use of public use of the I think that's important. You know, we have to be practical. We have to be functional. And so I would say yes to take the time to make sure that the town might need that land for that type of use would certainly be, I think, as important as the fact of other specific types of housing. But again, I think it is, the way it's set up, I can see where certain sections could be used for certain purposes, and yet through the landscape design, it could be integrated and be quite nice. And serve multiple facets of the community.
Thank you. I appreciate your.
Okay. Jumping a lot of people. Yes, we agree with what you said again, and with what Mr. Stedman said, in that it should evolve over a number of years, 5, 10 years at least. And one of the things that certainly will be taken into account in the very beginning is a roadway through there. And so whatever roadway is put through there, we should make sure that all runoff is mitigated. There may be types of roadways that may serve that purpose. I'm sure there are. Whether they're a lot more expensive, I don't know what that entails. But I do know that the natural beauty of the place and its various characteristics allow for there to be a really, really fine looking development in there, whatever it turns out to be. And the priority really should be the natural characteristics of preserving those natural characteristics of the plot, of the parcel.
Thank you. Let's see. Question 4 is, does the parcel location provide an opportunity for connectivity to the village area and to Cape Porpoise? If so, what should those connections include?
One thing we hope is that this roadway doesn't become a shortcut from School Street over to North Street, and doesn't look like it would lend itself to going too quickly through there. But on a more positive point, we suggest extending the walkway or the sidewalks of School Street down to Cape Porpoise, like there's beautiful sidewalks on North Street now. That is quite a distance to do on School Street, but we've done it before.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to pass.
You're going to pass. I'll pass. I'll pass.
No, right
Okay.
I'll jump in here
Yeah,
for a
right.
second. And this, I don't know if it applies to that, it's just a broad question. The stream that goes down through that property, that then goes under North Street next to the cemetery.
Right.
There's possible issues with erosion when you have these high tides and big storms. Just something, and the cemetery's right there, and the headstones, and are right there.
Basically,
Basic,
to answer that for you is whenever you're doing a stormwater study, which was done for this, you can't have any more water running off your site post-development than was coming off the site in pre-development. So the way this was designed, it would still pertain to whatever development happens. You have to control the amount of flow so that you're not exceeding that capacity. So we wouldn't be looking at doubling the amount of water coming off this site at one time. We create downstream erosion factors. And that's part of the state stormwater requirements and sound engineering practices. So it's well taken in terms of consideration, but those are standards you have to adhere to whenever a parcel is developed. So, but it is a good one. Actually, I think that there had been a failure there years ago, wasn't there?
I'm sorry?
Wasn't there a failure there years ago? I think it preceded your arriving.
Years ago would be preceding me.
Yes. 3
A
decades.
failure
Anyway.
meaning, what do you mean by?
It was, I just remember there was some problem with the culvert that went underneath North Street that had been, it precedes you as well. Yeah, I think it was probably in the early part of the nineties when we had that
Was the-
500-year storm event.
Yeah.
I think it kind of blew things out down in that location, so.
98.
I don't remember.
Was it 98 when it happened?
Yeah.
So, yeah, anyway, sorry.
Well, and we know from Vermont that big storm that happened one August.
Oh, right.
That, I'm speaking to the cemetery because there was a cemetery there that had this little stream trickling by it, but with that big storm, it eroded the land and the caskets went with it.
One comment on the sidewalks. There was a trend in condominium developments away from the sidewalks and catch basin designs and going to grass strips along the sides of the roadways with then a macadam path and then grass on the other side of that which would be a swale or wetland plantings that would capture the water from the road. It's a more natural and actually it captures a stormwater, but these new systems now capture stormwater as well, as you've just described. But it is a more natural way of capturing the stormwater if the development of the site or the intent of the site was to keep it in a more natural use, rather than having to be, if public buildings were there, then the sidewalks and stormwater management through catch basins, it tends to be a more police and fire, safe way to do it, so.
Thank you. Adrian, we're moving quicker.
Okay. I think I proposed this once before at a public meeting, but there is a way of connecting this beyond public access to it, to the village and to Cape Porpoise Village. And while it takes a little bit of imagination and probably a good deal of effort and a number of years, there is a connection all the way to Patty's Creek from this parcel. And that connection, at least as, I haven't investigated this with Werner or anything, but that connection is public access through a path that leads down to Wilds District Road. So there is, in long-term planning, the possibility of doing that. You could also incorporate into the nature trail historical elements that would bring into a relationship to it events that have happened that would also include details about Cape Porpoise and the village.
All right. What expectations does the committee have for the village parcel? I think some of those have already been kind of discussed, so it's almost like you responded in. Anything else you would add?
Yeah, no, again, go back to housing and that hopefully this parcel will provide some of the needed housing that the town doesn't have and in an attractive manner. That's it.
Pass?
Stebbin?
I just think that, in the end, the town is the town, all the citizens as a town, I hope it is approved by a significant majority, I hope we don't have something like a town meeting as an example, the parcel was somewhat fairly close, the vote. As I say, I voted for it, I think it's a good idea, but when the final use comes, I hope there's a good, strong support, and I hope we get, this is a tremendous process right now, but I hope as the process goes further, that citizenry as a whole weighs in on it, so we have the town's support by a wide margin in whatever is finally decided.
Thank you.
This has nothing to do with cemeteries. Bike paths.
And I think that's a good idea.
Well, you don't want the traffic going through, but to have bike paths going through.
So I think the official position of the Conservation Commission would be to preserve the open space. However, we do realize that that may need to be modified for public usage needs.
Ditto.
Ditto. You got that, Chris? And the last question, I think, has been kind of interjected in some of the other questions in terms of being able to retain, a portion of the site for future town needs. Anybody have anything else you would like to add to those comments at all, or?
We just anticipated that it would be developed in stages, and I think that's what's been said today, especially the need to maybe not try to rush anything. But over time, we'll accommodate the future needs.
Anybody else want to add anything? Well, thank you, this has been valuable input. And just to help you in terms of what the master plan is, as I said in the beginning, it becomes the town's roadmap in terms of how to look at the use of the site, and by no means becomes a definitive action plan that this is what's going to happen. So it helps the community at large understand what your needs are. Yes, hopefully, we've been getting a lot of input, so far. Hopefully, the visioning session we have in July will get a lot more input, and as the process moves forward. As Laurie said, we're trying to make sure we capture the time frame in which, the people that reside here are here back from winter and catch it before they head south for the winter again, so that we can really get a good pulse on what the overall community's needs and desires are.
Are there 3 meetings in July? Is that what I understand? Do I understand it correctly?
The meeting in July is a Saturday on the 13th, is a visioning session, where our entire consulting team will be present. We'll do kind of a visual summary again of, what the site is, some of the information that we've gathered from the first public session in which we had some input in terms of what people thought should be developed, what would make it a successful project, and then some imagery of types of architecture and uses. So we'll kind of do a summary of all that in the beginning part of that session. And then we're going to break out into groups. We're going to sit around with markers and plans and try and say how some of these types of uses and where they could occur on the site, and start getting a little more dialogue and information. And then the consulting team at the end of the visioning session, which I forgot what time we said we're ending the visioning session. Is it 1?
Says noon.
Noon 10.
On Saturday, we're ending at noon.
Right.
9 to noon.
Right, and then what we'll be doing is, that session will be a consolidated, and then the consulting team is gonna stay there and start dissecting everything.
They're gonna go to the fire station.
Did I say fire station? Sorry.
No, you're gonna start at Consolidated, but then you're moving to the fire station.
Okay, so we're gonna pick everything up, move this on Saturday? Sorry, I thought we were staying consolidated, moving the fire station on Sunday and Monday.
That's not what I said.
I'm not telling you what you said, that's what I thought you said. That's okay. So anyway,
We're gonna have
after we
fun.
do that session, we'll be taking everything we put together in that visioning session, going over to the fire station. And the consulting team will work that afternoon, Sunday, and then Monday, to try and take some of those ideas to put onto paper. And the public's welcome to come in periodically during those sessions to see what's happening, make comments as we're moving forward, and then at the end of the day on Monday, we'll do kind of the summary overview of, what came out of that visioning session to give the public an opportunity to even make some additional comments if they'd like to. So, and that one is kind of an at-will if you want to show up. It is a case where we're going to be doing a sit-down meeting during those working sessions, but the public is welcome to come in.
Jim?
Bob, what is your deliverables at the end of your contract? What is that going to ultimately look like?
It'll be the master plan document will be an assemblage of all the data that we've taken, all the meeting minutes, all the input, the ideas. The final plan will have the marketing assessment based on the types of uses, you know, to determine whether or not it's the types of uses are feasible economically. There'll be recommendations in terms of potential zoning modifications to the site, to how to make the program actually work. At the end, they'll also be identifying some potential public-private or private investor, affordable housing is an example. You know, there may be entities that the town could work with, so we'll be identifying some of those groups as well. And then you'll have an overall plan that will identify where some of these uses could occur in the site. So it'll be a document that, you know, could be an inch plus thick. I mean, there's a lot of the data, I mean, just the minutes alone, we're already starting to get to a point where we're about a half an inch thick in terms of paper per minute, so all that information will be put into the document so that as this master plan, people wanna go back and say, well, why did we get here? Here's the supporting information that came from the public input, that type of thing, so.
So, I mean, we would just really encourage everyone to come on Saturday, July 13th, and to let other people in your groups know about the public visioning session, because we'd really like to have a big crowd that day. So it's at Consolidated School at noon, from 9 a.m. to noon. Can you get on the town website, and we could just show people how to find information?
We have a button now for that, don't we?
Yeah.
On the town website? Yeah, it's awesome.
Let's just put Kennebunkport at me. I would just put in our URL.
Yeah.
So if here on the front page, Village Tomorrow tab, if you click on that, and then click here, here's the page. So it tells you what we're doing, it has the calendar of all the meetings, and on the left it has documents to help guide you about where we are in the process and background information. So you can get to it from the front page now. And we have information about the visioning event on there too. And if we go back to the front page, just as a lesson for people. So if we go down to the bottom of the front page, so see that e-alerts button? If people want to sign up for the agendas, if you click on the e-alert button, you can put in your email, and then there's a host of different things you can get alerts from. So any of the Village Parcel agendas can get sent to your email inbox, or the news on the front page, and so that's an easy way to stay informed about what's going on in town. So
I'm up next.
you're up because
Okay.
we wanna thank everybody.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. We had a good time, didn't we?
We had a good time, thank you, Alan.
I almost got beat up, but that's okay. You're welcome. Can they stay? They can stay if they want, right?
They can, we're gonna continue with our Village
Right.
Parcel business, but
But you
yes.
can also leave. It's up to you guys. All right, well, moving right along, we're gonna review of the input and feedback from the public kickoff meeting. Who wants to start it off?
So basically, the documents that we provided from the kickoff meeting, the first question we had people, at the end of the session of looking at all the different imagery and precedents, we asked the question of what kind of uses would you like to see? And we had everybody write down on a piece of paper and stick it on a piece of craft paper on the wall to give us a list of items that they thought they would like to see on the site. And so we tabulated every one of the comments. What we haven't done at this point is broken it out in terms of how many have said one particular item. But would you like me to read through these?
Sure. Would love to hear
I
some
don't know
of
that
them.
we
Some of
need to
them?
read it one by one,
No,
but maybe you could
some of them.
summarize.
Right.
Okay, basically, affordable housing and workforce housing were key important items. The nature trails, hiking paths, bikeways, sidewalks for walking as well as off-trail walking. Mixed use opportunities, municipal office infrastructure if required. There were some that said limited commercial apartment condos, townhouse apartment type mixes. Gathering space for the community, recreation opportunities, wellness, and community gardens. Let's see.
Don't forget zip line.
Yeah, right.
Damn, I just went over that. We gotta get this. I also need your name, because you're in the minutes and I couldn't remember what your name is. So, yeah, right. Be great to do. Let's see. Again, community space for all, affordable starter homes, not necessarily single family, which I took to be, could be duplex or multiplex type townhouse type units. Playground, limited retail, moderately priced homes all year, primarily year-round homes is what we're focusing on. Consolidation of the town facilities. Keep the spirit of Kennebunkport and surrounding towns, not to build up like so many places do, to actually take in what the residents want and not just a few. Our towns are beautiful, not crowded, and we don't need another fire station and housing for them. Please take into consideration not to spoil this place. So basically, some of the comments that you folks have already made in terms of integrating whatever uses are into the site that really promotes what Kennebunkport really is. So, town green. Woodland conservation and public access. Fun park, affordable housing and children. Children occurred in numerous places, so in terms of being able to get young families in. And let's see, and a hint of office space, but no retail, low-cost housing. So that's kind of a broad summary of what some of the uses were that came out of that particular session. And then the next question we had is what would make the project successful? And under this one, variety and style, not too much modern, homes for families, mixed use, golden opportunity to change and set the future for the town, let's not waste it. Mixed use that has multiple areas for different uses, something for everyone. Accessible for all and for all seasons, not just tourist season. Success would be a beautiful, peaceful, lively area that's welcome to all. A way to bring more balance into our town year-round for young families of all types. Creative plan designed by collaboration with public. Take time to get feedback from all stakeholders, environmentally sensitive and vision. And in all caps, real vision. Successful outcome, minimal development, affordable housing again, conservation land, community access gardens, no commercial, few of the pictures, and I think that comment is related to the imagery that we provided. And no or limited municipal development. Small area for RVs to park while shopping on North Street. Benefits to year-round residents and product is based on community input, produces places for community to recreate, gather, ideally provides affordable housing for young families. Broad community support and consensus about what the town needs and whether the parcel can contribute to that. And basically, same comments we have here this afternoon. Minimal traffic throughway entry pinch points, move roadway from abutters and line with pine trees. Phased approach, maintain character to make sure abutters are not inconvenienced. Global warming and climate change, green space that all the community can enjoy while preserving our environment, so that it goes back to preserving the natural character of the site as well. Make the town a place that fosters happy families, healthy lifestyles, green living, brings back local foods and businesses, and keep fighting corporations. Energy saving design features. Planning to include community ideas, fiscally conservative, think how to unite town, community center. Success would be people use it, all people. Recouping the town's investment. Good financial package that won't overtax the voters. Doesn't make more traffic congestion and noise, won't be able to see it from my house. And then appropriate recreation, balance with private uses, and reduces wealthiness of the town visually and actually. So that's kind of a summary of what some of those responses are, and these ultimately will be posted on the website as well for information for the public to be able to review what some of the initial comments have been. So I think we got a real good diverse
Section. I think for the Village Parcel Committee members who were able to make it to the public kickoff meeting, I was just curious what your thoughts about it and how it went, and what elements or thoughts you have about the visioning session that you think we ought to make sure we include, or how we get more people there.
Well, I thought that the meeting was really great. I think it was well done, and I think that the input that we got was very good. And the other thing I want to say about to these committee members here today, nice job, because we really got some good input. But you should, I hope you realize too that, or feel better about it, because what you've said today has been very consistent with what's been said by every group that we have talked to. So the encouraging thing that I see is that nothing will ever be unanimous, but there's been so much consistency among what the people who have been involved so far have said. And I hope that continues at the visioning session. And I'd like to make sure that we have some way of just assuring that the people that want to be heard can get heard. I know we got a 3-hour thing, but I think it's important that everybody gets heard.
And I think that's part of the visioning session. We'll break out into groups, so that the consulting team will work with the table and hopefully members of the committee. We have a committee member and consultant at the tables, and then being able to pull that information out and actually start writing notes and things on plans. So that's the overall goal, is that we get everybody to participate, rather than having, if we had 200 people in a room and trying to go through everybody's comments, we'd be there until the evening of Sunday afternoon.
And the other thing,
this way.
the other thing I'd like to say is that, I hope that the citizens realize that this is an unusual process for most projects, seeking the input and the various opinions and so forth. And there hasn't been anybody fighting, and there hasn't been anybody calling names except for today. The process has, I think, been one of a kind. And I think the town should be proud of what they're doing.
I concur, you're absolutely right, Mike. It's been ever since we've been doing all this, and especially Lori, everything's been brought together, and everybody's had a great opportunity to be able to speak their mind, which is a good thing. So, I agree with exactly what you just said.
I have a question on, because I think the outreach to get people and more people to the meetings is really important. And so particularly for the July 13th meeting, is there an additional way that we're getting the word out? I don't know if there's letters. I've seen those little cards, which is great. Are they in shops or, which may not bring the residents? You know, what places are we going, or ways that we have to reach out to folks other than hoping they'll see it on the website? Or, I know it's always a constant battle to know how to get information like this out to people, but we can't do too much, I think, because I think people are busy and they're, you know, we can't assume that everyone knows that meeting's happening or what's happening so far to do that outreach.
I'm sorry, I was just asking Warner for a card so I can post it at Church on the Cape, so I missed part of your question.
No, but we should encourage, you know, folks to do that sort of thing, yeah.
And I think that's why we passed those cards out the night of the first public session for people to take and, you know, meet with their neighbors, pass that information on, you know,
Yeah.
so that we can get, the more information, the better, and hopefully people watch. You know, I'm surprised how many people watch Kennebunk's planning board meetings, including the fact I wasn't there last night. When I went to vote this morning, I said, why weren't you there last night?
The more communication, the better the plan, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Just in response to the question about how we felt the meeting went, I really loved the setup. I thought the visuals were genius in terms of getting ideas rolling and having us be able to very concretely say, we had green stickers and red stickers to put on the images, and I think that worked really effectively for enabling us to see what the possibilities could be and quickly be able to sort of vote on what we thought would be appropriate or not. So I'd like to see something similar to that at the July meeting, particularly if we could target it towards making it more accessible maybe for younger people who may be in attendance, especially considering the location, and getting them involved. And also, I'd be curious, since we are seeing a really nice overlap, as Mike said, of ideas in terms of how we might move forward with this project, how we may, and I know it's a short time, but how we might incorporate some of the data that would go with those needs that we're talking about, to support that, and to provide, instead of just opinion, to provide some actual data for the town that this is a need that we see. So, but I thought it went really well. I enjoyed it very much.
Well, my office manager, when she was typing all this stuff up for me, she was having a ball.
Yeah,
Of course, then she
yeah,
goes,
we got great feedback.
what is that word?
So, Bob, are you gonna have some feedback for us for the red and green stickers?
Yes.
I mean, there were clearly some that had
Yeah.
very strong reactions
Yeah,
both ways.
we started to look at them, and the question is whether there were several that were all red stickers.
Yeah.
We may just weed those out, you know, they won't come back again. We did go with some off-the-wall ideas in terms of, you know, types of uses, just to get people to start to think a little bit. So we'll do a breakdown on that, and then also, with the notes that I read through, we'll kind of tabulate, you know, what those comments are, so that we can concisely hit bullet points and the types of uses that everybody's kind of expressed. And then, again, the minutes from all these meetings are being posted on the website, so that the other stakeholder meetings, the steering committee meetings, that first public session, we'll have these comments tabulated. There really weren't too many minutes taken during that, because really most of the dialogue was what was either we presented and everybody got up and participated, so there wasn't too many words to copy as far as minutes were concerned, so there really won't be anything on that, so. But it was videoed, and so, you know, the initial dialogue, and I don't know whether it captured any of the images that were on the table or not. I haven't looked at that, so I'm not sure. I may be able to look at that and see what some of the images were, but.
The York Coast Star was also there, and they did run a story on the event. And they did mention the visioning session as part of that. One of the things I was also talking to Parks and Rec also about is if we're a consolidated school, maybe we could have daycare on Saturday morning over at the Parks and Rec building, so parents could potentially drop their kids off and participate. I don't know if people think that's a good idea or not.
It's a great.
Yeah,
I think
it's a great idea.
Yeah.
One of the other ways, we are always getting comments from people when things are passed at a select board meeting, et cetera. And inevitably, we have people who come up and say, how come I didn't hear about this? How come I didn't know about this? So one of the ways for this July 13th, I think, there are organizations, parents of the children at the Consolidated, parents of the whole town-wide school system. If we could get, and I don't know how to do it, so I'm passing this off, but getting information out on social media to let them know that we're going to have the 13th meeting. I mean, we had somebody come into our meeting the other day who was totally taken aback that we even purchased this piece of land, because he had no idea. We have been working on it for over a month, more than that, 2 months, couple of months. So maybe if we get some information out on social media, whether, Facebook or Instagram, I don't know what else there is out there.
That's a great thought. The other thought with that, and I don't know, there's probably a big process through the school board, but I know when my kids were in school, things would come home in their backpack.
Right.
So if, we don't have that many schools, so I mean, just to get something the
Well,
last
the
day of
schools will
school
be out.
is like
The
next
schools
week.
will be out, so we
Friday.
can't do that.
Well, before, would be in the next few days, is that
Oh,
right? Are they
okay.
out? I'm not sure. They're out next week, I think, end of next week.
It probably would have worked for me with my kids, because I never saw what was in the bottom of the backpack.
Usually it wasn't good.
Yeah. I won't go. Okay. Let's see. I think we did that. The next dates, June 25th, will be another interview process with stakeholders, and that's going to be at the fire station. And then, again, June 13th is the visiting session from 9 to noon. And then
July 13th.
I knew I said that as it was coming out of my mouth. And July 15th will be the public presentation of the work that the culmination of the work we do over the weekend, and that'll be at 6 p.m. and that will be also at the public.
So July 15th is a new date. The consultants have offered that since they're gonna be working on the design all weekend, that they could then Monday night, do a little presentation of what they have developed. So I took them up on that. I know that some of you, may be out of town, because that wasn't a date on your agenda. But, I think that would be worthwhile while they're in town to see what, they were able to come up with and what feedback they heard. So we've added that date on as well, the 15th at 6 at the fire station.
Is there anything else that anybody would like to ask Bob?
Harrison, do you want to just use this? Oh, you have that.
I got one. I think it works. Going back to what was said at the last meeting when people left all their messages. One was a band. I'm in favor of it, but capital B-U-T. We would not want anything like they just had in Westbrook where they could hear it in South Portland. But I think maybe sometime in the future, in some area there, build a little small stage, but have people come in with no acoustic guitars or anything else. Regular old-fashioned guitars, accordions, fiddles. If somebody in there that wants to play on his grandmother's washboard. But it's something we could think about, and some year maybe try it. Another thing that was brought up, and I heard, was somebody mentioned you ought to get rid of 2 fire stations. Well, our forefathers were right when they set the town up, so to speak, with a fire station in various places. Because if you get a fire down the end of Turbot's Creek Road, especially in the summertime, it's only half an hour, 15 minutes maybe, drive from Wild District down to McNeil's mansion that he put in. And if a fire truck can get down there quickly, it doesn't take as much time and water to get a fire slowed way down anyway, until the rest of the Cape Porpoise, the village, would have a chance to get down there, hitch up on the hydrant, and get a larger amount of water going. Now, I have a series of pictures here that were sent to me from tumbleweed tiny homes. And I bought them tonight, and you people to look at, and it may be something that, when it comes time to planning individual houses on this piece, that you might like to go further and maybe get some other pictures of what they look like. Now I'll shut up.
Thank you. Anybody else?
How am I supposed to take that when you say thank you?
Yep. Anything else? Yes,
Yeah, this is a low-tech idea for advertising, but I found that using sandwich boards at the library and at Consolidated really does seem to, when people drive by, they wanna know, what's that about? And it sort of gets the word around. And it's there for a long period of time, and a lot of people may not go into the website, and you get a lot of them as, you know, as an alternative way of advertising it. I think it's a good way to do it.
everything helps.
Yeah.
Absolutely, everything helps, it does. Anybody else like to?
I have just a question. I unfortunately missed the public meeting, and I've heard great feedback, just anecdotally, from friends saying, oh, it was really energizing. They really liked the energy in the room. But what's interesting is everybody has said right away, I hear a lot of unequivocal no retail. And yet friends, knowing that I'm on this committee, you know, just some folks have kind of said, oh, wouldn't it be great to have some shops so we don't have to go into the port. The port's only for tourists. I'd love to have a place where I can shop that isn't t-shirts or, you know, whatever. So what's the disconnect, and what's behind most people saying no retail? What's everyone's understanding why that seems to be? I mean, I don't know, I don't have a feeling for it one way or another. I'm just curious why many people feel strongly what that conjures to them when they say no retail.
Well, one of the comments tonight was low impact on traffic. So if you have
It's the
commercial
traffic,
there,
yeah.
and not only that, but once you have one, it starts to snowball
Sure.
because you can't just have one or two businesses and expect people to come.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
have to have multiple businesses, and so you're really defeating the purpose of keeping it for the town. That's how I feel about it, and we don't need another coffee shop
Yeah,
Or another downtown?
or another
another
downtown.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
Is
that's
the
my,
traffic impact.
my view,
Yeah.
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 You know, one of the bases of what's one of the design standards is Great American Neighborhood. And that is really looking at a much higher density, a larger parcel, in which you've got not only your mix of housing types, but you introduce a coffee shop, a little general store type thing, but basically serves that greater neighborhood and is not intended to pull people from other, I mean, it may, but it's not intended to pull, you know, people from the greater community area. This parcel, while 86 acres plus sounds like a lot of land, for something like that to start introducing commercial becomes a real challenge, I think, you know, in terms of, you know.
Yeah, more like a new urban neighborhood, but it's part of the full
Yeah.
neighborhood concept.
Because the density of that probably wouldn't necessarily support the commercial activities, so you would have to draw on the greater community to do it. And I think that's probably where some of the comments, at least, a couple of people that approached me at the end of the meeting, you know, they're talking about no commercial, that was some of their concerns.
And we also have Bradbury's, so you don't have to come into town.
Right,
You know, you could
Right.
go out the other way and head down.
yeah.
So we have the resources already. I don't think we need it on the parcel.
Good.
Any other questions? Okay, well, I want to thank everybody this evening for coming. It was a good meeting. Do you have anything to add? No? I
Move to
take a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn. First,
Second, Mike.
all in favor? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.